guys. Basically have signed three today and expect to sign potentially maybe one more. That's kind of where this thing goes, and we'll let it play out through the day. But feel good about the potential addition of one other to the class. So, as we talked about before, the February 3rd or the first Wednesday in February is much different now than it used to be. And this used to be a day where, you'd stand up here and you'd sign 25 players or whatever the case may be, and then recruiting was closed. As of, the way things exist these days, recruiting's really year-round. As everybody knows, we signed a big group in December. We added 9 players over over the break, and have signed 3 more as of today. So we've got a lot of new faces. Expect to have more as we transition, into next fall. So I would expect, another 8 to 10 players to be added between now and by the time we take the field in September. So as I said earlier, it's kind of a strange signing day. It's different than it used to be, and we'll add players to our roster again, really all the way up until August and potentially even until September. And that's just the way college football recruiting goes these days. But I'm really excited about these guys. I want to talk about a couple of them. Obviously DJ Allen is a headliner. Wide receiver from Gladewater was committed here, before we got here. He was one of those guys that did a great job of just saying, hey, look, I want to be patient. I want to get to know the new coaching staff and their vision for me. Retaining Malcolm Kelly as a wide receiver coach was really important to getting DJ to sign with us. I think he and Malcolm had a very good relationship. Malcolm does a really nice job of recruiting. I think DJ and his family are very comfortable with Malcolm and the vision that we have for DJ in our program, and he's a heck of a football player. He's explosive, he's fast, he's physical, very productive, played a lot of different positions, can do a lot of different things, and, we expect him to run really good track and field times this year. He's run them in the past. Just an outstanding athlete and a guy that can do a lot of different things for us. So really excited about him. It's interesting. We went and did a home visit with DJ last week, and says he's 5'11". I'm guessing he's more 6 foot and maybe 6.5 foot at this stage. He's a guy that's really honestly has grown a little bit since I first met him, and expect him to continue to get bigger, and really excited about him. Ronald Lewis is a corner that we signed from Warren Easton High School, which is in New Orleans. Warren's very, very productive. I believe early in the recruiting process, I think at one point he was committed to the University of Texas. Just a very long, athletic kid that makes a lot of plays on film. Really nice young man when we got to know he and his family. Again, we'll run track. I think we'll have a chance to compete at a very high level in the state of Louisiana, both in the 110 hurdles and the 300 hurdles. Expect him to do very, very well in those races. He's got a lot of upside. I think he's a guy that, as I said earlier, is long, makes a lot of plays. Excited about his potential. And then Lawal is a player that we signed that played at UConn. Signed a scholarship agreement with us, and that's why we can comment on him. He's a transfer that has signed a scholarship agreement. Again, productive, has played a lot of football. That's a position I think coming into signing day we felt like we needed to address was depth on the defensive front and experience on the defensive front. And he's played in 34 games, has been productive, has got good size, good length, really good young man. Was really impressed with him when I had a chance to get around him on his recruiting visit. Very smart, very articulate, just a guy that's, I think will be a really good influence on our team. He's got 1 year of eligibility. And so, I think he'll give us some depth at that defensive, on our defensive line. I think he can play a variety of positions for us up front. And so, excited to see where he fits and what he can do. As I said earlier, I think he'll adjust quickly. A very bright guy, and really, really excited about him. So it's kind of, as I said, it's kind of uneventful in some ways. Like I said, we're waiting on one more. Feel pretty good about the possibility of it going our way down the stretch. But excited about this group that we signed today. As you can see on the sheet here that you have, we also have a lot of newcomers that we've added to the roster over the break. We hosted a lot of recruits. There's an interesting rule in the NCAA that allows players to take official visits, transfers, a week before they enroll in the university. And so we started school really early, so we had a number of those kids that came up on both unofficials and official visits that week, and we're able to sign some really good players and some guys that we're excited about, and gave us depth, particularly in some positions of need. So, again, really feel good about the newcomers that we've added to our football team, excited about the future. As I said earlier, I expect to add anywhere between 8 and 12 more, depending on what happens with our numbers as we go along. But a really good group, and a group that we're all excited about. Look forward to watching those guys develop and become really productive players for us. Yeah, we've said this before, but it's true. I mean, recruiting is really about relationships, and it's about trust, and so what happens is when you hire a coach, it's like anything else, they have a reputation, okay, and they have a reputation with high school coaches, they have a reputation with players at previous institutions who talk to players at other institutions, and so on, and so. When you hire guys that are good guys and have a good reputation, and and are trustworthy, and again have done this for a while, they have a reputation, and so what happens is high school coaches, junior college coaches, people that have influence on these players, they will listen to those coaches that have those relationships, and so I was really impressed with that. I mean, I think our staff, I think we have a really, really good coaching staff. I think we have some elite level recruiters on our staff. That's a big part of today's world, as you all know, is recruiting. It goes back to what we say all the time. You have acquisition of talent, you have player development, you have culture, are really the three things that are going to make you successful or not successful. And you better be able to acquire talent, whether it's coaches or players in this regard. So. I was impressed with our guys. Thought we did a good job. I think that we were impressed with TCU. Just as an asset to sell. I think that carries a lot of weight. I think TCU's got a great reputation in the college football world. I think when we get guys on our campus, the campus environment, the university, the infrastructure, the investment. All those things are pretty clear, and that certainly resonates with folks when they get on campus. And so, the thing that we want to try to do when a young man comes on our campus, we want him to see what we're all about. And we hope that when they leave here, they say, wow, that was something different, that was something unique. Those guys, were different than maybe some other staffs that recruit people. And so, I was impressed. I was impressed with what we were able to do. I mean, there's always one or two guys that you go, wish we could have got him, wish we could have got him. But that's what's great about the world now, the recruiting world, the world of the transfer portal, is if you miss on one or two, chances are you're going to upgrade. Whereas in the past, if you missed on signing day, all of a sudden you were in a bind. Now we have a lot of time to, number one, figure out what do we have currently on our roster. And number two, how can we address those needs that we need to address with another wave of transfers that'll take place, in May and June and July and really August for that matter.
How hard is it to assess where you are not having – you've seen film, obviously, you've seen them work
Right.
to know exactly what you're needing for.
You know, certainly it's not it's not a perfect situation from that regard. You know, there is obviously some familiarity between, you know, where we were and where we are in terms of playing against TCU in the past. You know, and just having an overall feel for the program. You know, because the thing about recruiting, it's really interesting. You know, it's really easy to turn on the film and go, "Wow, this guy's a really good player." You know what I mean? I think all of us in this room can do that. You know, and watch a highlight film and go, "Wow, this guy looks really good." The hard part is figuring out all the other things that are really important. You know, what kind of teammate is this guy going to be? You know, what's this guy's work ethic going to be? How is he tapped out, or does he have potential to continue to improve? You know, what kind of student is he going to be? You know, all these things that really truly matter, because all that factors into your program. And like I said, the easy parts, in a lot of ways, is the evaluation of how do they play once the ball is snapped. But all the other stuff is just as important. And you have to have a college football team, a college football staff, all that's made up of so many different pieces that you have to have guys in different roles. And you know, and you can't really see how they fit in those roles when the film's running, because there's so much more that needs to be assessed and evaluated. And so that's equally as important.
So, early signing day, you said you guys don't want to reach for anyone. I think you're ranked like 55th in the country. Do you read much into that, or did you guys acquire?
No. I think, look, if we went out and signed, you know, 27 high school kids or 25 high school kids, I think this recruiting class would be ranked really high. You know what I mean? But we're going to do what we think is the best thing for our program. You know, the one thing that we want to always do is you know, be ranked in December and January as opposed to being ranked in February. Now, those two things go hand in hand. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of ways to add talent to your football team. You know, a lot of these guys that we're talking about here, you know, you get no credit for signing them when it comes to recruiting rankings. And so when you sit down and you factor all the new additions we have to our program, a lot of these guys are on our campus right now working out. You know, we've had a chance to see them up close and personal. You know, I feel really good about this group. I think we've added some really good athletes. I think we've added some guys that are going to help us from a leadership point of view and perspective. And so when you just sit down and look at the list, you know, you can't help but get excited about what kind of guys these are and what they're going to do for our program. You know, as I said, I think I hate to burst anybody's bubble, but I think the recruiting rankings in today's world are really insignificant because of, you know, again, they don't take into account these other guys, you know, which again are going to make up the bulk of this team this year. I'm not saying that's going to be the case moving forward, but that's certainly the way it's going to be this year.
Coach, you mentioned Malcolm Kelly already as far as recruiting goes, but how important have he and Paul Gonzalez been for you as far as the transition?
Yeah, you know, they've been really valuable. Doug Meacham as well. You know, Matt Lewis has been really valuable as well. I mean, there's been some guys that you know, we've had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to be around, you know, Paul, you know, when I was here before. Knew Doug just kind of through the coaching profession, you know, and kind of knew Malcolm by reputation. And so, you know, those guys have been invaluable, really, just in terms of helping us recruit, but also, too, just, you know, giving us some perspective on the way things were and you know, just information and ways to improve things. And, you know, those guys are all excellent football coaches, all really good recruiters, work really hard. They're great team guys. And, you know, and their perspectives been really invaluable on a lot of different ways. You know, a lot of the things from an operations standpoint, you know, Matt Lewis, I mean, it's hard to put a value on what he's meant to us just in terms of being able to get here and get on the ground and get running fast because that's what you have to do.
Moving forward, balance between relying on the transfer portal and using it to your benefit?
Yeah, you know, man, everybody's still trying to figure out the transfer portal to a degree. You know, we have a philosophy when it comes to how we want to try to build our program here, and it's kind of a long-term philosophy that we want to address. And I think that the number one thing that we want to do is build a really good culture, okay? If you build a really good culture within your program, then you don't have that many players that want to leave, because they say, wow, I really like TCU, okay? I like my life here. I like my classes. I like my professors. I like my teammates. I love Fort Worth. All of those things make a difference, and they're all very important. And just a quality of life perspective. That stuff matters. The second thing is the football part of it is obviously there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to that. Playing time, how do I fit in the scheme, all those different things. But I think it comes back to what we talked about. It's recruiting your own players, and the way you recruit your own players is the same way you recruit high school or junior college or transfer players, is by developing a relationship with them and establishing trust. Okay, and so that's the first step, really, is getting to know your players, getting them, making sure that they understand, look, you have their best interest at heart, not only as a player, but as a person off the field, all those things. And when you create that kind of culture, then what you have is you don't have that many transfers, okay? So when you don't have many transfers, then that gives you an ability to project what your roster is going to look like, okay? Now, there's always going to be some. That's just the way it is. There's going to be a quarterback that loses a quarterback competition that wants to move on. There's going to be a junior that gets beat out by a true freshman that says, hey, look, I'm not going to be able to play. Those guys may decide to move on, et cetera, but I don't think you're going to have a lot of widespread kids leaving your program, okay? And I think that's where it begins. That's first and foremost. Then the second thing is, okay, how do we want to manage that when it does happen, okay? And so obviously when there's a coaching transition, typically there is a decent number of transfers, which we've had some of those. And what we have to do now is we have to look at the way our roster stacks up, the way it looks by class, by position, all those different things, and then we have to make sure that we address the roster the best that we can. And again, in a perfect world, you're going to have 20 seniors, or 15 seniors, 20 juniors, 20 sophomores, 20 freshmen, and kind of build the thing from there, and then incoming guys on top of that. So that's kind of what you would expect to see and what you want, and that's the way you're trying to build your roster. And then what we're trying to do, it's like anything else. When you lose a couple of players, we got hit pretty hard transfer-wise with D linemen. So now we have to go out and we have to find some D linemen that we feel like can come in, that have the size, the ability to play early, the experience to play early, and the wherewithal to play early and fit our scheme. And so that's kind of the way that thing takes place. No, look, I mean, we're every single day for the rest of my tenure at TCU, we're going to be trying to add a defensive lineman or a corner or somebody like that. I mean, there's no, we're never going to be satisfied with those guys. I mean, it's just not the way it works. We laugh about it all the time. I always ask our coaches, when's the last time we came in and said, wow, what are we going to do with all these D tackles? We just have way too many guys. It's just nobody in football has ever said that at any level. And so, that's the way it is. I mean, D linemen are hard to find. Corners are hard to find. Offensive linemen are hard to find. Same thing. I've never seen a coach go, say, hey, man, we got 7 offensive tackles. What are we going to do with all these guys? It's just not the way it is. So we're always looking to add to the roster. Same thing. I think that for us, we had some kids that reached out to us that were interested in coming. I think that they had seen the success that we had in the past potentially with some of the transfer quarterbacks, going all the way back to my tenure as the offensive coordinator at Arizona with Nick Foles, as a transfer to, Davis Webb at Cal, to obviously the guys that we had at SMU, and so I think people were interested in saying, hey, look, they've done well with transfer quarterbacks in the past. It's a quarterback-friendly offense. There's a good supporting cast. We engaged with some guys, and went down the road a little bit. It's like anything else. You kind of get to know them. Are they a good fit? Then you make decisions as you go along. They were doing the same thing with us, evaluating us, and we were evaluating them and seeing whether or not we thought it was the kind of person we wanted to bring into our program. And so, like anything else, we're always looking to add a player. The good thing is, at this juncture, we'll be able to go through spring ball and see what we have at that position, and then assess it at that point. I think we all know there's going to be a lot of really good quality quarterbacks that are going to lose the starting job this spring that are going to go in the portal. And so I think this quarterback stuff will start all over again, and my guess is there'll be a higher number that go in May than there was in December, and I think the quality will be better. Yeah. No, it's just the difference about this, I think, in some ways, is it just never stops. You know what I mean? And the recruiting part, I mean, look, and I think we've always done this to a degree, and I think this is what we've always tried to do to make ourselves a little different than everybody else. But, I mean, look, you got to recruit your own players. You know what I mean? I mean, we got 130 players we're recruiting every day, and we're trying to give them and look, we should have been doing that anyway, because we want those guys to have a good experience here playing football, and they need to have a good experience. And so, as I said earlier, when you have a chance to get to know them, they trust you, you trust them. They know that you have their best interests in mind as you make decisions. Then, you develop a bond and a trust, but that takes time. That takes time to do sometimes. But yeah, we're recruiting our players all the time as well.
Coach, were you happy with the addition of safety? You guys were able to manage?
Yeah. Look, I think we've got when you look at our list here of guys that we've added, I mean, there's a lot of DBs, and there's a lot of length. I think that's the thing. I mean, when you look at the group and you say, well, where are these guys going to play? I mean, I think some of them can play safety. I think some of them can play corner. And so it's a situation where, the speed is there to play corner. Some of these guys are bigger guys. I mean, you see Kyron Chambers, and I mean, Kyron Chambers looks like a linebacker. I mean, he's just put together, and he's a corner. I mean, he's a guy that can really, really run. Now, does he end up being a safety? Does he end up being a nickel? Does he end up being whatever? I mean, I think he's going to, play corner, and we'll kind of see where that goes from there. But when you look at the overall list, I mean, there's a lot of guys on the list that can do a lot of different things, and guys that we're excited about. Mark Perry's another guy that comes to mind. I mean, Mark Perry's probably close to 210 pounds, and ran some pretty impressive track times in high school and at Colorado. And so, where does he play? He projects as a corner based on his speed, but could he play safety? So again, all this group, what you want to do, I think, is DBs, is you want to recruit long guys that are athletic and can run, and then it's like anything. It's like playing receiver. You kind of what the spot looks like at inside and outside receiver. They have some of the same characteristics. They have some different characteristics. It's kind of the same thing at corner, particularly in our style of play, where you want longer guys. You want guys obviously that can run. You want guys that can tackle. And so safeties often look like corners, and corners often look like safeties.
Coach, what's that quarterback room look like in the spring? What's the numbers?
It's a good question. I mean, we'll kind of see. I think we'll end up with probably have 6 quarterbacks in the room, 5 or 6. There could be a position move or two that comes out of that group, but I think we're going to start with 5 or 6.
I mean, going to quarterback, Trey, I think it's like 5'9", 5'10". All the DBs you signed is 6 foot. Is that kind of the baseline requirement for you?
No, not at all. Not at all. No. I mean, look, good football players are good football players, and they all come in different shapes and sizes. We had this conversation in our staff meeting the other day about somebody we're currently recruiting, and it's one of those deals where you turn the tape on Saturday and you watch Tyrann Mathieu make all these plays, and you go, well, that does not look like an NFL safety. You know what I mean? And so Trey's a very, very good football player. There is always room for very, very good football players on the field at a variety of positions. And so, Trey will be a guy that will be featured, prominently in our plans moving forward.
But it's important for you not to get kind of stuck in that box.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, no, I think, look, we all have measurables that we have in mind. It's always the same, but at the end of the day, good football players trump measurables. You know what I mean? That's always been the most important thing.
Can you talk about the kid from Iowa Western? I can't pronounce it.
Namdi, yeah,
Yeah,
Namdi.
He was 5'11" in high school, now he's 6'3". How did you guys come about him and find him, and how's he doing so far on campus?
Yeah, we stuck him in a stretching machine and added an extra 4 inches. No, Namdi is one of those guys that's a late bloomer. I think when we first started to do some investigative stuff on him. He's a player that Paul found. We watched his high school film. We thought his high school film was okay. He didn't get the kind of offers that he wanted. He went to Iowa Western, grew, got bigger, kind of hit his stride, and is kind of a late bloomer in that regard. Again, he's a player that's with us right now. He's got a lot of talents, length. I mean, he's long, runs well, has good change of direction. He's got a great attitude. When you come from Iowa Western, sometimes there's a transition, coming to TCU, just in terms of, trying to keep up. The standard is probably a little bit different here maybe than it is there, and he's done an unbelievable job at doing that. I mean, he rolled in from day one. He looked like he belonged, and has, competes every day very, very hard in our early morning workouts, and is a guy that I think has a lot of upside. And so, sometimes that happens with players. And, it goes back to what I said earlier. We've all seen the kid that, as the 8th grader, you go, this guy's the best prospect I've ever seen. And then his senior year is the same as he was in the 8th grade. And Namdi, and then you've also seen it just the opposite. These kids are where they come in, they're not very good early in their career. And all of a sudden you look up and they're playing in the NFL. And so, Namdi's one of those kids is a late bloomer, and I think, is going to continue to do nothing but get better.
Sonny, you kind of mentioned it, but the early start to the semester, did that have a negative impact on y'all?
Yeah, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world. It's interesting. Some of these guys, and I don't really know how this works. This is something I think would be good for maybe you guys could find the answer for me. But like some of these guys that are in the portal are just announcing schools. Well, I mean, we're 3.5 weeks into class. My question is, where are they going to go to school where you just show up 3 weeks late? I mean, I don't know where that school is. I've never worked at that school. But evidently that school exists because that's kind of what's happening. Yeah, for us, I mean, it was a little bit of an inconvenience, and probably, certainly I know had an impact on some guys that we were on, just that wanted to have some additional time to make their decision. But, the fact that we started early, that's way above my pay grade. It's nothing that we can control. It's like anything else. It's out of our hands, and so we're not going to worry about it. We're going to make the most of the situation, and I think it's like everything else. I think in some ways it probably helped us. It helped us, kind of force some guys' hands and just say, hey, look, if this is what you want to do, you can't take any more trips. You got to jump on now. And so just like anything else, it probably hurt us in some ways and helped us in some ways.
We'll go a couple more questions if you have them.
Coach, now that you've been in this role for a handful of months, what's something that you know now about TCU that maybe you didn't know before you came?
That's a good question. I'd been here for a year, so I had a little bit probably more knowledge about the overall university, maybe, and kind of situation here, as you normally would. I just had been here before, and so, but I think it's like anything else. Like I said earlier, TCU sells with young people. I mean, there was a lot of kids that we got into the process recruiting that said, TCU was my dream school growing up, and I'd been at other institutions, even going back to my time at Navarro Junior College, where a guy might tell you that, and I'm thinking, I don't know that Navarro was really your dream school growing up, and so you've got to kind of sort through what's real and what's not, but there's a lot of kids that grew up TCU fans, and it goes back to, the success that this program has had in the past, and you know, the tradition of TCU football, and a lot of these kids were growing up when, you know, this program was in the top 10 year in, year out. And so a lot of these guys saw that, kind of grew up during that era, and certainly remember that. And so, you know, and we're TCU fans. And when those guys grow up and they're a fan of your university, that certainly helps you when it comes to recruiting. And so I think that's, you know, the power of TCU, I think is I knew it was big. I think it's bigger than I thought it was. You know, I think when we get kids on campus and they come visit, you know, we have great infrastructure here, great facilities. They get to see a lot of really nice things, which is nice and shiny, and you know, young people like to see that. But you know, I think that's the one thing. I think the second thing is just the overall enthusiasm for the university. You know, from the people in Fort Worth and from the fan base. You know, it's fun to go to basketball games and see that. It's fun to hear people talk about how excited they are about baseball, you know, and a national championship coming back, you know, and to TCU and baseball. Just put a little pressure on your coach over there. But, you know, I think people are just excited about this university, and there's a tremendous amount of pride in the community when it comes to TCU, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, whatever the case may be. You know, people are invested. And I think, again, I knew that to a degree, but I think the longer I'm here, the more and more obvious that becomes.
Final question, if you have it. Thanks, Coach.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it.